Mhm.
Welcome to this edition of the Men's Room Show. I'm excited today to have Deborah McLain joining us because she is a powerful source of encouragement and healing to many individuals. In her work as a guide, alongside her husband Steve, they provide couples ministry, which helps couples come together and find connection within themselves and with their partners. And in their time together, the couples begin to learn how to courageously speak their truth. And they do that without the guilt and shame associated with what you would think of as traditional counseling, coaching. And what they do is they walk lovingly beside the couples on their life journey. And during their time together, they get to help them to recall the reasons why they came together in the first place. And as they do this, they move forward with renewal and joy for the present. So, why is all of this important today? It's because Deborah McLain is an accomplished speaker. She is a teacher. She is a guide, and she's much more than that. And for today's episode, I thought it would be fun to share a few fun facts about Deborah. Some of them I did not know. And so the very first one is that her idea of kayaking is paddling to the middle of the lake with a friend and talking for hours. And I relate to that one in a much different way. I'm that person in the kayak that gets out in the middle of the lake and can't get the kayak turned around and going in the right direction. So if you and I go together, at least I know we'll get back. Now, the other fun fact that I wanted to share with the audience is that you were voted a Teen Fire Princess to represent our city's firefighters, even though there were no other contestants. That
Yeah.
says a whole lot about who you are, Deborah. It doesn't matter whether you're among one or many, you shine regardless.
Oh,
And so today's episode, the reason why I'm very excited to be able to speak with Deborah today is about the work that she does in the couple space. And the reason why it's so important is because when men and women come together and they begin to unpack their relationship, it comes with a lot of mixed emotions. It can come with sensitivities. It can come with fears. And I believe that it doesn't have to be that way. Is that right, Deborah?
right. You want me to say more?
Oh, I definitely want you to say more. I would like you to frame up the conversation about what you and I were discussing behind the scenes
Yeah.
about the time that you have worked with couples
Mhm.
where the woman was all ready to jump on board, ready to go to to find the commonalities, to develop the renewal, the trust, and really take some of the issues at heart and work on them. And then the men, when they find out they're gonna have to do that, they're like, oh my God, I gotta come here and come to this thing that I'm being drugged to, maybe in some cases. And or if they do come willingly, they're not really sure what to expect because it means they're gonna have to talk maybe about how they feel or
Yeah.
about what they're thinking about. And they want to do it in a way that they protect who they are as a man and also to protect their relationship and how they're viewed as from their partner's perspective.
That's right. There is tends to be more apprehension in men to accompany their wives to, this kind of counseling. But one of the things that we have found, and they have told us this after the fact, is when they heard it was a couple and not just one person or the out like a man or a woman, but it was a couple that was going to be, you know, together with them. Somehow they're a little bit more open to doing that, and but the men, and I really get it. I think a lot of times when, in the past, men have gone to counseling and they're just getting beat up, and not really heard, or that, it just depends. But I think that is a very big fear, is that, oh, I'm just going to, get told what I'm doing wrong and what I need to do right. And our approach is so different than that. And we also, Steve and I, have both been divorced, and we've both been through this. We've both had broken relationships, and we have failed. So it's interesting how, you know, we're very faith-based, but we just see how God uses the broken people, oftentimes the ones who have actually been through it. And when a couple comes to us, we're like, hey, we've been on the other side, we've been on that side of the couch, before, and we know what that feels like, and we know the fears and anxiety and hopelessness. Frankly, there's a couples come to us oftentimes as a last resort. And so we each time we do this, we take it very much to heart, and we treat each couple individually, and we do a lot of listening, but we go through this process, and we can talk about that too. So
Thank you for setting the stage for what we'll be talking about today, because I think it's really important that we dispel some of the fears, and you mentioned them there. The whole thought of showing up and then getting beaten up for supposedly, being the problem or the issue. Definitely, I wouldn't want to show up to a place or a space where I was going to feel like I was under an interrogation rather than a mutual mediation.
yeah.
Um, and do you find when you're working with the couples that women also could like feel something too when they're going through this that surprises you maybe even?
Yeah, it's very vulnerable for the couple. It's in fact, anytime a couple comes to us, I just feel like it's really sacred ground, because they are coming to us in their most vulnerable, and oftentimes, like I said, very kind of a hopeless. Well, I'm sitting here, but I can't even imagine this getting better. The last couple that came to us was quite recently, and she had been referred to us by a friend, uh, and they were at the point where she was in the car when she called me, and she was in the car because she was looking for a place to live, because she was moving out. That's how far it had gone. And she said, my husband says, don't even ask me to go to counseling, because I'm not going. Just don't even go there. I'm not going. And so I just said to her, well, okay, how about, why don't you just say, look, I don't, because she didn't know us either. She's just going by a recommendation. Put yourself together with him in this. I said, why don't we go once? And if you and I don't like it, or it just ain't for us, you know, we don't have to go again. But I think we should try it once. But use the we together, we can go. And if we don't like it, so in other words, it's not, putting him on the spot or making him make a decision, but make a decision together whether this feels like the right thing for the two of you or not. And he came. It was amazing. And they both, when they both first came, the first few minutes, they were both like, we're so nervous. And they actually said, we're so nervous right now. And then we just said, you know what? Just let us share a little bit of our story. And so we just started sharing a little bit of us. And my husband's had multiple, failed marriages. I had one. We connected when we were 50 years old. And we felt like we got a second chance, at life and at marriage. And so, we just kind of put them in ease right away. And they felt like, oh, okay, I don't feel any judgment here, and sometimes I'll say, there's no judgment zone here because we've been there and we know what it's like. And, but there's all kinds of hope. And so we talk first about, do you want this marriage? And I know that sounds like a kind of an obvious question, but it really is an important one because at, with this last couple, they were ready to walk away from each other. But when they came, they said, yeah, we want it to work. We just don't have any hope that it will. And we're like, okay, well, we can work with that. And so that sort of that verbal commitment was there. And then we talk about the different areas of marriage, but we talk about we can talk about the different areas, the challenge areas and the growth areas. We don't call them problems. And they're problems, but we just call them growth areas, growth opportunities, because they are. And so much of it is about communication and how a communication is approached. And the one major key communication that we talk about is listening for understanding. Now, there's a difference between listening and getting ready with the next thing you want to say and being right, and then listening to understand what the other person is actually trying to say. That doesn't mean that isn't the agreement part of the conversation, but it's the understanding part. Because so often we're talking over each other, or we're in the heat of the moment, and it just is a mess. So we start with a forgiveness piece, and it's amazing what happens just in those few moments where you pick one thing that you do, and you speak for yourself, not for your partner. What's one thing you bring that hurts the marriage? And so one of them gets to start and say, I know I bring, this thing, and, I'm really sorry, forgive me. And the other person says, well, what I heard you say, because let's make sure that we understand what the person is saying. What I heard you say was, you bring this to the marriage and you're sorry and you'd like my forgiveness, and I forgive you. And then the other person says, thank you. It's important to do that all the way through, because when you are you have to extend forgiveness and then receive forgiveness too. And there's something that happens, and we believe it's very spiritual, because it's just a principle, a godly principle, is that when you extend forgiveness and you forgive yourself, it's gone. That's the promise. It's gone, and then you get to move forward. And so you extend each other grace and forgiveness, and then with each area of challenge, you can use that same principle and way of communicating that helps you understand first what the other person is saying. Then when you agree on what the problem is, then you can move to a solution together and make an agreement around that. When this comes up again, let's make sure that we do this, right? Or something like that. I hope I'm not jumping ahead too much, but
Oh, no, you're not jumping ahead at all. What I think that what you're sharing to our audience that's very valuable is that the whole premise of why this approach works is because of the solid foundational communication skills.
yeah.
Because I heard in the very beginning that there's a choice. So each person can choose to come into a session, and at any time they choose to not come to a future session, let's say, because they find that it's not for them,
Mm-hmm.
then that puts them in a place of ease. Because if you're not committed to something and following through just because someone wants you to, is much different than choosing to come because you want to work on something and knowing that there's always a choice to either move forward or to move away from the sessions. And so that
Yes.
feels really good,
Yeah.
because no one wants to do something that you're being forced to do or you're obligated to do, but you choose to do. So
Yeah.
so just coming from a place of, we're in this together, well, each of us has an opportunity to decide at each step of the session about going forward, And if something needs to be put on pause, I imagine that could happen in a session as well, where one person says, I need time, I need space, I can't go forward anymore. And so knowing that there's that type of I guess environment for that to happen. And then
Yeah.
the other thing that you said that I thought was really helpful to point out is that as you're like going through this, and I understand the whole um I extend forgiveness, but then I receive forgiveness. That one there is a skill that I think takes a little bit of practice before you can fully fall into being able to give and to receive. And so that skill there is something that I think is really important, because it's one thing for one person to say, I forgive you, but then if the other person is not really receiving it, it can feel like you're not united, you're not connected. So what you're doing during these sessions is you're teaching people how to connect with themselves by expressing what they need,
Yeah.
making choices, but then at the end of the day, the end of these sessions is you're teaching people, once they figure out that for themselves, how do they connect with each other? How
Yeah.
do they make decisions together? Because asking a couple on whether or not they want the marriage, I mean, that can change the conversation that
Mm.
you're going to have from one direction to another. So knowing that you have two people that united that want to make it work, but they don't really know how to go about it or have that hope in that moment, that's what they receive during these sessions, is that hope. And then the skills, you help them to build them by not just telling them what the skills are, but actually working through them in the active part of the sessions.
Right. Right. And we start out, telling a little bit about our own story. And then with the communication part, we have them think of one thing that you like about the other person or love about the other person. Think of one thing and then do the communication exercise with them. So, for example, like with Linda, with you and I, um, I just love your heart toward people, and it means a lot to me to be around you. You inspire me. So
Thank you.
you can say what I heard you say. Go ahead. What I heard you say.
So
Which
what I heard you say is that you see the heart that I put out into the world, and that I love and take care of people, and that you really respect that about me, and it brings you encouragement and inspiration as well.
Very good. Yeah. Yes. And you heard me right. And so the other thing in the listening is we say be sure and listen for keywords, because oftentimes we will, when we're trying to express ourselves, we will use keywords because they mean something. And so I said the word inspire. You inspire me when I'm around you. So, that'll be a keyword. And you did use that word when you shared back with me what you heard, and so I felt heard. I knew that you understood what I just said to you, and so uh, so if this so even in a compliment, you can say, "Well, thank you," and you can say, "You're welcome." Just receive the thank you, and receive the compliment. And you know what? That's really hard for some people. I love compliments and I'm a words girl, but that is not easy for people. Perhaps you were raised where you never heard I love you, or you know what, kiddo, you did a good job. Or there's so often that parenting was not what it should have been, for kids. And then you just carry that into adulthood and you're not used to it. And so it's uncomfortable, but you can get used to it because it feels really good.
So you help people that may not have been exposed to this type of communication, or even um, expressing how they feel, acknowledging other people. You're right. Unless you grew up with someone that practiced that skill, or you were, in the educational setting where for some reason it was brought into the conversation, because you're an educator. You know that the goal is education of the required skill sets, and not so much about the social emotional learning. A lot of us, if we're going to get it, sometimes we're lucky enough to be exposed to someone that does have those skills, and so that we can be brought
Mhm.
into them. Other times we're not as fortunate, and so the only way we're going to know is if we come across someone like you, Deborah, where you can compassionately teach those skills, and do it in a way that feels good, and less scary. Because when you don't know how to communicate, or you don't know how to express yourself in a way that you don't get hurt, or your words get used against you, or all these different things that can run through your mind of why you wouldn't express something. Once you are in that space where you realize it in a positive way, then once that happens, you want to recreate more of that, and then it becomes this repeatable skill that everyone benefits from.
Right. Absolutely. And there's something we do have different needs as women and as men. I don't know if I'm skipping ahead with your question.
Oh, I think this is great. This is a great segue to jump into that, because that's what's on my mind is like, okay, men and women are definitely wired differently,
Yeah,
but you can't always say that men always this and women always that,
right.
because sometimes the roles can be reversed. But in generality, there are some distinct things. And so um, I'd be curious to what you're going to say here, because I have some thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we have not heard any opposition to is the fact that men, their core need is to be respected, and women's core need is to be loved. And there's actually a verse in the Bible. It's in Ephesians, and it's 5:33. If anyone knows the Bible, um, and it says, "Husbands, love your wives." I wrote it down. Husbands, love your wives as you love yourself, and wives, respect your husbands. So there is something very profound there, and it sounds simple, but it's speaking to the core need in a woman to be loved, to feel loved and secure, and the man's need for respect, and they feel loved when they're respected. And so when we get into these ways where the woman is not feeling loved, and she's ratty and all like complaining all the time, and why can't you this and why don't you that, um, then he feels so disrespected that, do you think he wants to, throw some love her way? No, he's like so frustrated. And then that makes her feel even less loved. And so she's going to react to that. And we call it the crazy cycle. And there's actually a book called Love and Respect. I'll show you the cover of it. Love and Respect. And we don't go through the book in our sessions, but some of the concepts are really good in that. The crazy cycle is what I was just talking about. And that's where, if you're not feeling loved, if the wife isn't feeling loved, then she's going to be gritchy, right, to her husband. And the husband's not going to feel respected, so he's not going to feel love toward her. So therefore, she's not going to feel love. So, and it just is this vicious cycle. But the hope of that, and the opposite of that, is toward the end of the book, which is really, it's just the book is good. It's just more, it's stories in it, but the concept of it is, and then this is the reward cycle, which is when he's feeling respected, he gives her love, she's feeling loved, therefore she shows him respect, and it's the opposite, right? And so there's so much reward, and you're nourishing the relationship when you're in that reward cycle. And it sounds pretty crude and elementary, but when practiced, it really does work. But there's some tools that we help a couple in order to do that. So, yeah.
What I'm hearing is that you actually, to be effective, you start with the end results in mind. So I'm thinking that men typically want to be able to know where they're headed and what they have to do to get there. So when they know that this crazy cycle can be avoided and turned into a reward cycle, he's going to want to know, well, how do I get that? What do I need to do? So he's going to be already engaged. And then the woman, because I'm going to sit on the other side of this, she's probably thinking, oh, I can feel loved and cherished. And how do I get my man to do that for me? Oh, I'm in all for it. I let me learn how to do that. So you
Yeah.
have this thirst, this this need for being able to be respected and to be loved, and the two exist together. It's just that one sex over the other has a little bit more of a driver of how they get there. And so knowing this, I think is very helpful. It's also I've heard out in the space within the men's coaching is that men in a relationship need to feel purposeful, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
and so they actually don't want to be wanted, they want to be needed, whereas women, they want to be chosen, they want to be wanted. And so here's another example of another dynamic of what's desired. But I think as men and women, we get in the way of actually getting there. We get in our
Yeah.
own way of actually getting to what we both want. But when you bring communication, effective communication and tools into the mix of
Mhm.
how to get there, then it's much easier to get there. And then when you know that there's hope that you can get there and that there's tools that you can practice and you got someone such as yourself and your husband to guide you, well
Yeah.
then voila.
Uh, I think the other
Yeah.
hesitation when a couple first comes is, how's this even going to go? I
Oh,
mean,
yes.
what could you possibly say or do that could help us turn this thing around? And, I think I might need to get the feedback from this last couple because it was pretty powerful how short the process was. Their marriage turned around so fast. It was literally like after 4 sessions.
That's
Like
amazing.
they were moving out and he was not open to counseling at all, to, you know, they're cuddling on the couch, they're touching each other's knee, they're leaning in, they're talking, with their eyes connected, and I'm like, get a room, guys. It's great.
So, so
And
what could you say from your observation
yeah,
during those 4 sessions was the turning point where they were able to find that playful energy,
yeah.
to appreciate and respect each other, to be able to give and receive in a way where people feel loved? Because there must have been a point where that happened.
Yeah, I think there was a relief in the first session. I saw relief come over both of them, especially him, when my husband was sharing. Well, and he's very, he's so easy to talk to that, most dudes, their walls come down within a minute or two of being around him. He's so calming and real, and just, he goes first, like he's saying, hey, I don't have, I don't have it perfected here, but there's some things that we've learned that we love to pass on because it has really helped us in our marriage. And we've been married 14 years now. So uh,
Congratulations.
anyway, but one of the things that I saw visibly a relief come over the guy was when my husband said, we're not going to spend much time rehashing the past. We are going to be looking forward and moving forward, because that's actually, God wants to help us. He is our helper, and he doesn't want to rehash it either. Why do you think the principle of forgiveness he set in motion is because when we forgive each other and forgive ourselves, it's done. So you don't have to rehash the past. Now, sometimes it will come up because we're human and the past will come up, but at least now, okay, we got some tools to know what to do with it. And I think I think he really loved hearing that. Something resonated with him, and well, the wife called me later and said he couldn't stop talking about how great this was. And it made me emotional because I feel like this couple is so sweet, and uh, I saw the love between them, and they almost missed it. They almost walked away. Sorry, they almost walked away from each other when all it really takes is some truth and some shift in thinking, and giving God a chance to get in there and let him help you. That and it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple in the fact that when we just say, you know what, God, we need help, can you just help us, and then use these tools and work at it, because it's awkward at first to say, well, what I heard you say is, but it actually, then you're listening, you're practicing listening better, and so you're listening for understanding. You're not defensive when the other person is saying, I really need to explain why this hurts me when this is said, or when this is done, or when you don't call me when you're going to be late, or it just feels like disrespect, or like the thing, whatever the thing is, when you can express it in a safe space, which is, okay, I'm listening for understanding right now, I'm not going to just try to be defensive, then that is when the beauty happens. It just happens where, oh, I understand. And sometimes you're going to hear each other and not agree. You get to the understanding part, but you still don't agree. But that's okay, because then you go, okay, so we don't agree on this particular thing, but we still need to figure out a way forward. So let's talk about making an agreement around that. For instance, like if there's an in-law problem, which can be common, you express how you feel, and both of you do about it, and agree why it's a problem. Because if it's one, you guys are one if you're married. If it's a problem for one of you, then it's your problem together because you're married. So then once you understand that concept, then you can come to an agreement on, well, if the in-law does the same thing again, we're going to be a united front, and this is what we're going to do, or whatever it is, that you come to an agreement together on the solution. Now, I love to talk about something that really helped us when we were first married. Both of us brought in major debt. Him from a last spouse who took him to the cleaners and left tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And me, I had come from being a single parent and a single person for many, many years. And I had some debt I went back to school. And so I had school debt. And so that was many thousands of dollars. And we just thought we were going to have to live with debt, for the duration. And we were pretty hopeless. But then this program came through our church, and they were going to do small groups with it. And we were like, let's do it. And they just took us through this simple, process of writing down your bills, writing down your debt, writing down, this is it, and putting it on a piece of paper. And together, if you do it as a couple, we decided, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to bring down the debt. And it's called a snowball. I don't know if many people are familiar. It's a little bit Dave Ramsey, but it's a little simpler than that. And if we do that, my dog's trying to get in. He loves me. If we are coming to an agreement together on these finances, all of a sudden it's this thing out here that we've agreed upon, and it's written down, and you can see it. And I'm visual, so that more than him, it helped me go, okay, this is our agreement out here. And once we did that, then if something comes up and we need to adjust the budget or you know, put put something off because we want to purchase something, then we go, well, let's go look at the agreement and see where we can adjust. And we did that because I'm the crazy couch lady. I love buying furniture. I don't know what it is. I just want everybody comfortable in my house. Okay, so I wanted to buy a couch, and he says, well, let's go together and look at the budget and look at our agreement, and let's see if you still want to adjust something or whatever. So once we did that, and it was, so I didn't have to feel like I was coming to him for a yes or a no, because it was our finances together. And he wasn't having to be put in a position of saying no to me. It was our agreement that we went back to, and with an open mind. And then we decided, I was like, no, you know what? I don't want to mess with what we agreed to right now. So I'm going to let the wanting that couch go. I'm just going to let that go for now. So that's just an example of that was really good for our marriage, to have it be not with each other, but with the agreement. Does that make sense?
Oh, I absolutely love that example that you gave, because
Yeah.
most of us can relate to finances. You
Mm-hmm.
know, you have two people that contribute towards the family, budget, family goal. And when you don't have to necessarily be that one person to go and ask the other person, "Oh, can we buy this?" And they say, "Well, no, we're not going to do that." This is a healthier construct
Mm-hmm.
because you have an agreement about what the finances are. So you have a current condition of where it is.
Okay.
You've talked most likely about where you want to be at a certain
Certain.
state, because,
Yeah.
we go through life processes all the way up to, retirement. And being able to have it be more of a collaborative decision making, it
Yeah.
feels better because
Mm.
one person doesn't have to get vetoed and say, no, we're
Right.
not doing this, and feel like they're not heard, that what they want doesn't matter. And I think it makes a lot less friction, because finances are an area with most couples that can cause a lot of friction when there
Mm.
isn't the agreement on what the budget is, what the long-term goals are, and how you come to making a decision about what you buy and what you don't buy, what you
Yeah.
invest in, what you don't invest in. And so I think that what you shared there is a valuable lesson for everyone that's listening to this
Mm-hmm.
interview today, to be honest. So thank
Yeah.
you for that.
Yeah. And that just helps with trust, because initially it's all out on the table. It's let's get this all on paper, all our debt. And there's some shame with it. We both had shame with what we were, our debt, and maybe we didn't make good decisions sometimes. And well, here we are. Okay, so let's just get it all out on, we're in this together. And so let's figure out a way forward. And within 5 years, we were debt free.
That's wonderful. And I think you were saying, you were wondering why that gentleman got on board and was so excited and ecstatic and couldn't stop talking about it. And it's because I think that when you speak to the way forward, that
Yes.
gives you hope.
Yeah.
Whereas if you rehash the past, you can't necessarily go back and change it. So the only true way to move forward is to go forward, and
Yeah.
yes, you might, as you said, have to touch upon the past where it comes up, but it doesn't mean you hang out there. You hang out into the place where you are and where you're headed as a united front, and that's what the counseling, the mentoring that you do is all about, is about getting people in a place where maybe they don't have to wait till they hit the rock bottom to come see you. Maybe they could come see you as things are going good, and how can we make them even better? That's the model I'd like to see.
Yeah, yeah. And we do have some couples like that. And I admire them because they are, again, they're coming, acknowledging we have a good marriage, but we know it could be even better. And so good for you guys for investing and being willing to kind of be vulnerable and come and get a tune up. We call it a tune up, and whatever. But we love working with young couples, but we work with all ages, and it is something that is pretty amazing to behold when there is this couple so broken in the beginning, and you get to watch this healing start to happen, And I call it leaning in, because usually when a couple comes to us, they're sitting on opposite ends of the couch, right? And then each week they sit a little closer and and a little closer, and then a touch of knee, and then a leaning in, and then now they're sitting close. They're a couple again, and they're working through this thing together. And it is important to address, specific things, especially if they come up more than once, but in the sense of, okay, if we can be safe and agree on the problem, so it's listening for understanding, agreeing on the problem, then let's make an agreement around the solution. And we practice that by the forgiveness piece, but we also then we start practicing by something fun, which one of the areas of marriage is recreation, or something fun to do together. And so often couples forget to play. They forget to enjoy time together. Or frankly, we're working harder these days, harder and harder, just to make ends meet. And so husbands and wives or couples are, working more than ever. And, you're not spending as much family time. But if you both are intentional about carving out time to do that, and you talk about it, and you use the same communication skills. So here's another way we can practice, right? And we have a couple go, okay, think of one thing each that you think would be fun to do as a couple, and as a family or whatever, and express that. And the other person listens for understanding, make sure they get everything. And then the other one, and then together you make an agreement around doing that thing. And then the other one comes up with something. And oftentimes it's a little bit of a surprise, what the other person would like to do. They're like, I would do that with you. You want to do that? Okay. And it's just this discovery. And so it's not all doom and gloom. It's not all heaviness. Like I said, most of the time we get pretty quickly to the moving forward part, and the hope, and building something for their future, and things to look forward to.
So what better way than to rediscover why you came together in the first place? Because I think that when you can do that, that all things can change. And I like what you said about how you put an activity out there about what one person would like to do, and then the other person would share that. And even though they've been maybe together for many years, an aha moment comes up like, oh, I didn't know you liked to do that, or I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that that's, another testament to when men and women come together to do problem solving, to better understand each other,
Hmm.
everyone benefits.
Yeah.
The individual benefits, the partnership benefits, and then all of the people, their friends, family, coworkers, community, everyone benefits. And so, that's one of the main reasons, or one of the drivers why the men's room was formed, was to have a better understanding about what men and women need for each other, and how do we best go about it. Because we talked today about how men and women love differently,
Yeah.
and so the whole respect, and to be loved,
Hmm.
and to extend respect, then you receive love. That right there, I mean, that's only one of many models. And so, why not learn how we can be better for each other as humanity?
Yeah.
And so really it's not all about, that we're in the men's room. It's about that we're women showing up for a conversation, so men can also have a different perspective or view from, maybe our lens as women, or
Yeah.
our lens as women that help individuals. and
Yeah.
and so to do that is powerful, it's impactful. And we could literally spend hours together, going down so many different segues from this conversation today.
Hmm.
And so actually I'd like to invite you to come back on the men's room show, and we can go for, a continuation. We could pick one of the segments that we talked about today, and even take it a step further. one of the things that's really important for us on the men's room show is if you come in and you're listening to our interview and you really resonate with what's being shared, and that's something that you are passionate and want to come on and be a guest, it's very easy to do. Deborah, you said I'd love to come in and be a guest, and we talked about what you would be sharing with us today, and I was totally down on board to do that, and so you know that's what we're here. And so if you are someone that has a thought or a theme that you'd like to see us go down on the men's room show, I invite you to apply. And I want to also extend the invitation that if you're a man or a woman, a couple, and you would like to explore your marriage, your relationship with Deborah and Steve, that you would also reach out to them. And so, Deborah, would you share what the best way to get a hold of you to have that conversation?
Sure, I don't mind giving my cell number, and you can certainly text and say you watched the podcast and would like more information. That would be fine. It's 631-793-8283, and we'd be happy to talk to you. Yeah.
Thank you. And we have one more thing because we don't want to leave the show without hearing one piece of advice or something that you would like our listeners to take away from today's conversation. What would that be?
One piece of advice. Well, I have a funny story.
Oh, that would be great because you are the storyteller.
Okay, so um, you know how women figure things out oftentimes by just talking about it, and when we talk, then it comes to us, right? Or we just need to vent something. And so my husband, he's learning that, and sometimes he even says, okay, is this to fix, or do you just want to talk, what? And so he's learned to ask, but that took a long time. But anyway, so this one particular day I was really, really hurt by something that happened, and it had nothing to do with him. So I came home and I was like really like needing to vent, and he was folding laundry on the bed, and I came in and I went, okay, I need to vent right now, and I I just need you to listen, and I'm really hurt. And he drops what he was folding, and he backs up into the chair, and he just sits down and he goes, okay. And I just started you know just really sharing my heart and my hurt, and this happened, and I don't understand why this happened, and and then right in the middle of it, I stopped and I said, and by the way, you're listening really good right now. And he goes, so like he still didn't, he was still listening, And I'm like, so we can, we're in our 60s and we're still learning how to, be there for each other and help be there in the ways that each of us need to be, in the ways that we need to be loved. So I felt very loved and listened to and heard. Yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing that story. I'm just like laughing and smiling, and my face probably is stretched tight now just thinking about that. And really, that was just a literal example about how we share with our partner how we want them to receive us so that they know where they can fall into line. In that case, where don't fix it, just listen. And the only way we can get there is when we communicate openly and honestly. And so that's a great message to leave all of our listeners with today. And so
Yeah.
again, out from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming in and having this conversation today.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.